Hello and welcome for this new video on the tutorial of Adobe Experience Platform API wrapper called aepp. And on this video, I will do an introduction on what is Adobe Experience Platform. This video may have been the first video for some of you because if you don't know what Adobe Experience Platform is, it will be very hard to actually know what aepp can help you for. Uh, However, I assume that you are already knowing AEP when you started the AEP tutorial. Uh, but I think you may not know the whole extent of what Adobe Experience Platform has to offer. And in order to make sure we have the same understanding and we are talking about the same thing, I want to take some time and discuss this. Again, as a disclosure, this is a personal project, even though it's using some of the Adobe standard elements. It's not an official Adobe training materials, and I may oversimplify or omit some elements for oversimplification, or I may miss some information due to me not being a data engineering person. However, once that is getting done through, we can start and give you an introduction of Adobe Experience Platform. So this agenda of the today videos is will be in aepp architecture and then the different services that you are able to access from Adobe Experience Platform. I will also not encompass everything. I will mention some of the elements. For example, AGO doesn't have an API capability that can be used in aepp, so I'm completely omitting this element, which is a big and important part of Adobe Experience Platform that is not yet covered on aepp because of missing APIs. But there are other elements that are also not mentioned or barely mentioned in that element. So it's not an extensive overview of what aepp has to offer, but it's just giving you an introduction, as explained, to have the same understanding between you and me for understanding it. So if I go to Adobe Experience Platform and I'm logging into it, you will see this interface. This interface gives you all of the different elements that you can have access to when you have a license for a platform. They may have additional elements if you have, for example, AGO, which I do not have here, or if you have offer decisioning and so forth that can give you access to more elements that are not mentioned today. These elements are being described as different things like connection here. You can see they have customer element, profile, audiences, identities. So this is the interface of Adobe Experience Platform. The most important one when you set up Adobe Experience Platform is actually the data management, database on schema and datasets. You can see queries also there and monitoring in places. And there is also the administration panel that is also available here. I wanted to give you at least a small understanding on how it looks like if you never log to the interface. Also, you can see here that I have access to different sandboxes. You see that there's a production environment is called aepp training, and there is also some development sandboxes that are called EMEA Consulting and Global Training Project. I'm in the EMEA Consultant organization, and here you can see that AI is now part of the every project in Adobe has to offer. So it's now have some AI capability where you can ask AI anything. We will not cover maybe in the future video if you are interested in the different AI feature of Adobe. However, they are not API based. So again, it's using the interface, which we will see. We are not going to use that very often. So once we have seen that, we can go back to the PowerPoint. So this was just to give you an introduction on how the things are placed on the left rail and how the things are placed in the middle and what are the main important things that we are going to discuss. So there are two elements that we are going to see, and this architecture is a simplified version of it and a more complex one that you can find in the Experience League, which is the documentation available for people to learn from Adobe. In this simplified architecture, we can see that Adobe Experience Platform actually are using a few components. And usually what you do have in Adobe Experience Platform are element data and element data being sent to Adobe Experience Platform. There are two ways to do that, either by streaming them or by sending by batch. So normally the main database system are using batch information, and everything that is event based are using streaming elements. So uh, you see that in this way, you can actually stream your elements from your enterprise storage. Or here you can use the streaming data collection, which is called IP Web SDK, either server side or client side, to stream into Adobe Experience Platform. Adobe Experience Platform has mainly two things in the B2C. In the B2B context, there are more elements that are possible to add, but in the B2C and the more simple context, uh, it has two things, and that's what we will cover. As it's main of the use case, we will cover probably do a video on B2B element in the future to show you what it's capable of. But on the B2C elements, you have two main schema, which are or two main classes that are made to contain event information. So elements, so data sent with a timestamp and profile record. And the profile record is very important because the whole Adobe Experience Platform license is based on the number of profile you are going to have. A profile is a single user, and it's a single user once he has encapsulated all of its possible identities. Let's say I am a user using a cookie ABC, and I am also a web user using the ECID, which is our cookie system, 123. Those two uh, profile are actually two profiles in the system, so we will be counted two for your license. But once we have merged them through an event, a profile record that contains those identities in a single payload, then we say the moment I'm logged into the user interface, for example, or the moment I'm logging in the application, or in my car, or in any IoT device, that I need to have that, and I have those two identities linking each other, then I become one. And at that time, I'm only paying for one customer because then the two profile information are merged into one. So that's a very important concept in Adobe Experience Platform because it's a database system uh, that is focused on experience to the identities, to the profile themselves. You cannot store any type of information. You could go and tweak the system to store more type of information, but what the system is built for a single profile communications. And this single profile communication is the base of Adobe Experience Platform. First mistake that I've seen is that it's a big data lake. You can load all of those type of information, and usually the CRM system have different type of schemas, catalog schemas or star schemas that are not always linked to a profile, to a user person. This is not the way IP is intended to be used. IP is intended to be used to send only profile information attached to a profile. You can extend those profile information or the information to a customer by, for example, I'm now purchasing the product XYZ, and this product is attached to several attributes. You can add those attributes in the system regarding the price, regarding anything. That's also possible. But at the core element of all of my data in IP is a profile. And this is what you want to do because we are going to communicate and do element based on a profile. On a B2B context that I'm just overpassing now, you can have more abstraction because you can have account information, you can have opportunities information, you can have purchaser group, buying groups as a group of elements of profile together. Those are all of these abstracted version that exist in B2B context that does not exist in B2C, and we are not covering them because we're trying to stay simple, which gonna be still quite complex. So as I was saying before, the event information are usually streamed. This is the default way to ingest data into Adobe Experience Platform. And if you use the API Web SDK that it try to use, always use by default the edge network. The edge network, it's a base of compute CDN that are across different regions, and we are then capturing the data in this edge network, and we can actually have information really, really fast to those edge network. They try to keep it sync with the Adobe Experience Platform itself. So when you hear edge, at the edge on Adobe Experience Platform, actually it's outside Adobe Experience Platform. We call Adobe Experience Platform as the hub. That's the name where everything is being computed, but we have some extension, some projection that is able to be done on the edge, which is an ultra-rich CDN. You can think of it as more advanced CDN capability that is able to connect with the API Web SDK server side or client side, and these are interconnected. So everything here is kind of connected within the Adobe ecosystem. If you want to stream only data and do not expect anything to happen on the edge for some reason, so on the edge you can have edge segmentation, you can have response back from our experimentation capabilities such as HEO or target. Sometimes you do not want to have that. You just want to stream the data from your self-service system, from your customer care. You don't expect anything back. You can already stream that via a normal streaming services, and this is going through here, and it's not going through the edge. Then the streaming services, in our case, is going to reach the pipeline, and here is going to start to be ingested in the different Adobe Experience Platform databases. Because the important element of Adobe Experience Platform services is that it is not a single database. It has three different databases. One which is called the data lake, which is the first one that everyone expects from a CDP, like the storage of where all your data is going. Then you're going to two different elements that are the profile store and the identity graph. The identity graph is a simple linking of all your identities, as I was explaining in my previous example with my customer profile being ABC and my cookie ID being 123. Once they are linked together, we are creating a graph for my identity that are saying those two people, those two identities in their different data sets that you have are the same person. So the day I request ABC or the day I request 123, they are going to populate the same information on my profile. So this is done by this identity graph that is being displayed here. The profile store is a projection, is representing a projection and composition of all the different data sets that are enabled for profile. So when you enable data set for profile, you create a data set, then you allow it to project it to the profile store. And this profile store will measure data most of the time based of the last entries. So we will actually populate the information as an attribute. So for example, I'm a male person, I'm born, I'm 40 years old, and so forth. Those all of the information are coming from all the different data sets are going to uh, provide this 360-degree view based at the identity graph from all the different services that are loading into this. These are all the profile attributes, so you think of them as attributes that do not change so much, so like my age or my membership status or my uh, sex group or anything like this. You can think of them as attributes. Then you have events that are coming from my web behavior, for example, or from my application behavior, or from my purchase history, anything. Those are actually combined into a big array of different experiences that you can then reach through segmentation and build on top. So once you have this profile store, this is representing all of your user. Each user is going to be a single key, and this key called XID is represented by different identities, and those different identities allows all of the data set to combine the data together in case of profile or to store the data together in case of events. This is very important because we'll see later, some services are using data lake, some services are using profile store. The power of Adobe Experience Platform uh, is that the profile store allows you to do segmentation. You see the segmentation on-chain. It is actually what powers is going to do segmentation on this 360-degree view, which is very hard because it's maintained and it is updated in real time. Most of the case, we'll see that in a minute, and then actually, yeah, being populated everywhere. The segmentation engine is the power of Adobe Experience Platform in the end, as well as this profile store identity graph. Storing the data in itself from streaming services and from batch services are not going to be a difficult task for any operation of CDP. But the power of keeping them projected and updated in real time and being able to segment in real time and send them to destination is what is going to power them. So you see that the segmentation is what define the profile that are actually used and are going to be sent to destination. It gives you some idea that, for example, if you are sending some data into a data set that is not enabled for profile, it will not reach a profile store or identity graph. Therefore, the segmentation will not be able to take the data that you have sent to that data set and then send that information to the destination. So this kind of thinking you need to have. Really be careful about your profile store. He had some guardrails and limitation. Same for the event. The profile, global profile cannot be more than 100 kilobyte, and the number of events is not more than 5,000 events. So that's getting, you need to think of keeping only the relevant one. There are ways to make sure that you do have a limited amount of them and a limited number of attributes accessible in IP. So coming back on the ingestion, when you're going to stream the data, it's reached the pipeline. And the pipeline is going to update first those different profile store identity graph based on the identity that you have sent. Because as I was saying, each identity is a key to load the data. And therefore, pipeline knows that here is the key because each message, each payload you are sending to IP is going to have an identity, what we call a primary identity for the main one, because you can have more than one. For example, my email address would be my primary identity and my ECID will be my secondary identity. Um, so we're going to link them in the identity graph. So as you load the data and each of your data load are going to contain identity, it's going to easily update all of the things and can trigger a segmentation update in case a qualification has happened based on the criteria that have been received. If you are sending the data via the edge network, for example, it's going to same going to the pipeline. And I was saying the edge is also in sync with what happened in the hub. So it's going to send the projection if anything has happened here and needs to be updated to the edge network. If you are sending the data to the batch are first loaded into the dataset. And then after some times here, it's going to send the data back to the profile and store and the identity graph store. So there are some delays to load the data in the data lake. And there is also a delay when the pipeline is to go to the data lake. They are micro batching it every 15 minutes for all of the data streamed. So this is important information that some data can be delayed and the expectation elements for data sent in the batch is being available in the next 24 hours. And for the streaming is to be available in real time, which means within a minute or within a few seconds. I do not recall the SLA for all of those information, but yeah, basically this is the real time processing and the batch information are the things you send and do not require to be updated in real time. I hope that was an easy way to understand what IP can offer and how IP works in a very simple way. Now we're going to see the more detailed uh, capability of Adobe Experience Platform. As I was saying, there is a server-side and client-side data ingestion that are sending data to the edge network that is doing different services, and profile segmentation is one of the things. Another capability that we have in Web SDK is the event forwarding that we can send data to either other Adobe application or other services based on the data received here. Then we are sending it to the pipeline again. Here, it's a more complex representation of capability of streaming data or to batch data. And here we are seeing the data ingestion. It's a whole services in IP. And we have a capability called data prep that I didn't discuss before that can do XDM translation because all the data you are going to load into IP needs to be a specific format. It's called XDM. It's a schema definition that helps you to understand what type of data you are receiving. We cannot send anything. We first need to describe what you're going to send, and then you can send it. Sometimes you do the transformation before, so you can directly send XDM compatible payload, and sometimes you cannot. And therefore, you need the data prep service to actually prepare the data and transform it to an XDM format compatibility. The customer profile is here explained in one single entity with the profile store and identity store. Segmentation and audience composition are two faces of the same coin, I would say. Both are part of the segmentation capability, and you see that in that official documentation, they are part of a single real-time customer profile because in the end, this is what we're going to send to the real-time CDP, to the destination, or to ATO, Journey Optimizer, here in our case. The data lake, as I was explaining, is a different things that are available. You can see some of the services that are available for the data lake, such as dataset export or data access API. And there are some governance capability and some discovery and insights, such as query service. And we have also now getting more intelligence and AI data coming that can help you leverage information. Important to know, many of you may know me by my customer journey analytics wrapper as well. Customer journey analytics use the data lake and not the profile. It can leverage some of the profile information with the stitching capability, but most of the event data are going to be from the data lake. Mixed model are also coming from the data lake. And we can send afterwards also some insight to partner and application via real-time CDP as well. So this one is a very much more complex, but in the end, it encompasses all of the things I was explaining before in a much more defined way. So in the summary, the AP main component are the profiles. The profiles are the base of your element that you are sending. You always think to send profile information to your IP instance. The profile could be a single user. It could be a single entity in case of B2B. You could trick the system to send a profile being something else as an enterprise or something like this, but this is not the way it's intended to be used. So be careful when you try to modify the way it's intended to be used. So the profile is normally representing a one-to-one persona that you can contact through either email or through different cookies or elements. Namespaces. I didn't discuss that, but namespaces are the different type of representation of your user you can have. This is very important because you can define the namespaces you want to have. Most of the time, you will have email hash, uh, ECID. Those are predefined namespaces you can use in Adobe Experience Platform. But most of the customers have also their own CRM ID. And that case, you can define that as well and saying, when we send a payload from our enterprise source system, we have an additional identity, which is called a namespace, that is called a CRM ID for you. It could be UUID, whichever name you want to do, like completely non the customer that I have, so I have no idea if that's true, but like Nike ID for Nike, um, or Unilever ID for Unilever or something like this. This is completely a makeup example. That type of namespaces that define your profile in your customer way. Then the schema are very important because this is where you define your XDM payload. So this XDM is the type of payload that are accepted in the uh, Adobe Experience Platform dataset and therefore in the profile. We will see them into more detail later, but the schema is a very important concept in IP, if not the most important concept to get it right, because depending on the schema you're creating, you will not get the same thing in the profile. I told you about difference between profile, attributes, and profile events, and you can imagine it's going to be extended with the B2B element with account and so forth. So understanding how to define your schema and your schema composition is very important. We have learned that there is three databases: the data lake, the UPS, which is a profile storage, unified profile storage, and the identity, which call it also UIS for Unified Identity Services. Audience and segmentation, and also destination are main component of the Adobe Experience Platform. Over the next few minutes, I'm going through the different services. We're going to go through the different videos of these tutorials. Uh, just a quick explanation. I will redo an explanation later on during each of the videos focusing on this element. So you do not have to listen to that, or you don't have to, if it's overwhelming. This video is already explaining a lot of concept, but I want to have this part somewhere, and I feel it fits well here. So services in IP are schema. So it's the base of data ingestion, as I was explaining. You need to define an XDM model for your data to be ingested. The main elements in the schema are class, a schema, field groups, and data type. A schema is a container of a class with different field groups, and the field groups could contain different data type. It will contain native data type, but also custom data type that you can define. We'll see them later in one of our next video. Then we will see the catalog. The catalog is an abstraction of the Adobe Experience Platform Databricks catalog, as Adobe Experience Platform is based on Databricks. It's also called the data lake. So it is not exactly the data lake that you can directly manipulate, but it gives you a metadata information on this about the dataset that you've created, but also the metadata of the batches, as you can do investigation on batches to understand what is happening, how many data has been ingested, and so forth. The customer profile is the API access to the CosmoDB union profile, so UPS. So you can do there a single entity request. You can see the 360-degree view of your users, see which audiences this profile is qualified for, and you can also define some pseudonymous profile retention. There is no API for that, so we'll need to use the UI, and I will go to more detail about that when we go into that chapter. The identity API, you can think of them as the creator of the namespaces that define your profile cluster. As I was explaining before, you can have different namespace provided for your organization: Unilever ID, Nike ID, Adidas ID, whichever you want. Then you create them in the identity API. Those are giving meta information on how identity service can behave and will stitch a user together. When we go to there, you can also be able to setting up the linking graph rules. There is no API for it, but we will look into the UI and see some demos and make sure you understand the basics of it. Query service. Query service is the service that allows you to query the IP catalog, the data lake. It is not meant to download data from it. It is only to query. What you can do, however, is create new data set. And you can also access some UPS extract. There is something called profile snapshot that is extracted on a daily basis on your service. And it's a snapshot of the UPS profiles, the union profile CosmoDB. But this is just a snapshot. It's not the real live capability. And this data, it is only able to access those data and not download it. You can create new data set from it, but it's not part of the standard license. It's the license to be able to create data set based on queries, on SQL queries. It's called data distiller, and it requires additional SQL and capability. It's usually very useful license to be able to manipulate your data inside your Adobe Experience Platform interface. Segmentation and audiences. So segment is still called a segmentation API and internally a segmentation, but in the user interface you will see audiences now. It's all you to create profile clusters based on segmentation condition. So you will need to say my event is based on this specific application, my event is on a specific URL, your profile is a specific membership loyalty program, and so forth. You define the population, and then based on that, you can send them to destination. Destination do not read from catalog from the data lake. It only reads from UPS based on the condition of the segment. Uh, the advanced segmentation capability is possible. You can create segment of segment. You can create dynamic segmentation as well based on the content of the data. So it's very powerful and it's quite a learning curve there. There is three main core you need to know when you do segmentation. Batch, which is segment availability on a daily basis, streaming, real-time qualification, uh, and edge, which is the one accessible on the edge network that I was explaining before. Batch has a limit of 4,000, I think, as of today. Streaming is 1,500, and edge, I think, is 500 segment capability. And overall, you have a limit of 4,000 segments in each of the IP instance sandboxes that you have. Flow Service API is to define how the data will be ingested and how the data will be transported to the different destination. It's the same API to handle both elements, to ingest and to send data. It has a high abstraction in the UI that is making it quite complex when you use the API to understand what is going on, but we will go through that when we will go through the data flow, the Flow Service API. It is also the new and default way to extract data from IP, as there was uh, uh, another way before that is now being uh, not maintained anymore. Deprecated service, exactly. This data access API is what was used before to download data. It's still being able to be used, so you can still access it and you can still use this API, but it's normally replaced by the export dataset capability based in the Flow Service API. We have also an API for the data ingestion. This is the capability to send data into IP. So the flow service define how to ingest it, and then the data ingestion can give you the way to send either batch or streaming. We have the edge, which, as I was telling you before, it's a kind of a CDN and living outside IP. It's part of the IP network, but technically it's living outside. And it's quite advanced and complex. It's like a mini CDP in itself. It's handled authentication. It's handled dispatch of requests to services such as Adobe Analytics, Adobe Target, IP, AGO, or official offer decisioning. It's handled server-side services. It has some semi-recognition engine, and it also has projection service to keep element in sync between the edge and between the hub. And that is the thing happening. In IP and Adobe Experience Platform, we also have a capability to delete data in IP across services. So in data lake, profile, and identity services. If you delete data there, it will automatically be deleted from all of the other downstream services that IP use. So this is called data hygiene. There are some default limits set up, but you can always buy more license for extensive usage. I think the max is 2 million identities. The calculation is quite complex based on the number of profiles your license is accounted for. So this is not 2 million is not the default. It's the max that the default can allow you. If you want more than the max can allow you, and your max may not be 2 million, as I was explaining, you will need to add additional packages. And I think finally we have the data prep that I'm going really quickly through, but it basically allows you to modify incoming or outgoing data from or to Adobe Experience Platform, and it works with streaming and batch. It has unfortunately limited functionality on arrays and arrays of objects, as it has very as you can imagine, very complex setup to work on those capabilities. But we'll see how we can handle that when we go through that service itself. So this was a very long and very details go through of all of the services of the Adobe Experience Platform and how Adobe Experience Platform works. I hope that was helpful for you, and don't hesitate to rewatch this as it was actually very insightful for newcomers in Adobe Experience Platform. I see you on the next video.